What's up, folks, and welcome to an Indie Retro Ramble Fusion. So, yeah, I'm sitting at the Switch home screen here because, well, I got to give you all a headphone warning before we start this one off because while this title I'm going to talk about today is something I actually think is pretty cool, there are some baffling sound design choices in it, and, well, you're going to hear one of them right off the bat. So, brace yourselves. I won't let it go on too long, but it's important to understand this. It's just... yeah. Does that kind of sound like something stuck? Yeah, it's not. There's a fairly lengthy intro to this game that involves a sort of old-timey film sequence, and that is the sound effect loop that they chose to use. It's about a second long, and it's like fingers on a freaking chalkboard. What were you guys thinking? I don't even know. It's the worst offender in this game for sound, but not the only one. But other than that, this is actually something kind of cool. So this is Steel Empire, and yes, we're back in shmup land today, one of my favorite lands indeed. So Steel Empire was originally a Genesis game, actually. It was developed by Hot Bee, which is a company that a lot of people who weren't around for games in that era probably don't remember. But they produced a fair amount of stuff. They went out of business a good while ago, but they produced a bunch of interesting stuff. So this was originally a Genesis game, and what we're playing today is a remake of it, but it's not just a re-release of the Genesis game like a lot of those Rodalaika collections or things like that I've been covering. This is actually a proper remake. And it's rather odd because this remake actually came out on the 3DS a while ago, actually. Sorry, I'm just looking here. Yeah, 2014 in Japan and 2015, 2014 in Japan and North America and 2015 in Europe. From what I can tell, this is basically just that version, but condensed down to a single screen and put on the Switch. Kind of weird, but it's actually a pretty decent remake of this. So yeah, as I said, this was originally a Genesis game, and I did play some of the Genesis version just to get a feel for it, because I'd actually never played this game before, and as a shmup fan, I wanted to see what it was like. And this does seem to be a pretty faithful remake. It takes most of the original concepts and designs and puts a modern retro coat of paint on it. This still feels a bit like an older title, but definitely more modern than it was. But no, you don't get to play that anymore. So it was kind of interesting, and yeah, they just put this out on the Switch, which is cool. It's nice to see this get put out in more places, and yeah, I've enjoyed it, but I'm going to give you guys a couple little caveats here to make your decision with. So there is a story to this game. It is definitely a shmup story. It's not the best translated thing in the world. We're kind of in like a steampunk era here, I guess you'd say. And there's a war going on. Bad things are happening. You're trying to defend the world, that kind of thing. You have these little relatively simple cutscenes before each of the stages, and it tells you what's going on. They go on for a little bit, but they're kind of interesting. And then you get this little extra blurb at the end, and then off you go. So in this game, you have two different craft you can choose from. It's kind of funny that it says the vitality for these are either tough or very tough. There's nothing less than tough. So these guys build them well, it seems. But yeah, as you can see, like type to ground and air, that's not super well translated, but basically this one is faster and better suited to both ground and air targets. This one is slower and better suited to only air, and it's a little tougher. That's basically what it is here. Yes, I am about to sortie. Why, thank you. So yeah, this will send you off, and so the way this works is it does several things that you'll recognize as common in shmups, but it does some other things a little bit differently as well. So the first thing you're going to see here is that you can fire in two different directions, and each direction actually has its own separate button, which is kind of cool. So if you want to shoot left or right, you just press the appropriate button to shoot in that direction, and you will have to. You will regularly get attacked from enemies on both angles here. You also pick up power-ups, as you can see there, that will eventually level up your weapon, and then you have power levels that can go actually pretty high. If you're able to stack those up, you can make yourself pretty deadly if you want. There is a bomb function as well, which is pretty dope. And like most shmups, you'll get a bonus at the end of the level if you don't use all your bombs. You also saw those little $ pickups I was grabbing. Those are extra score. They provide extra score. Actually, every pickup provides extra score, but those will provide additional bonus score at the end of the level. So that's kind of how that works. And yeah, so the way you power up your weapons in this is interesting. You don't have multiple weapons. You only have one set of weapons, so you can pull out these little options. And I kind of like the simplicity of that, because the weapons, having only one weapon and having to master that rather than have to potentially master multiple kinds or do what most people ultimately do, which is just pick one and make that sort of your main for the whole time. I kind of like the fact that it makes it a little simpler, and it's just like, yep, this is the one you got to deal with and that you got to learn, and that's that. Some people would say that's not enough depth, but I actually kind of like it in this case. And pretty much every level has a mid boss as well as an end boss. The bosses are all fairly inventive. You will sometimes see repetitions, but they're actually pretty unique, and they all have their own particular attacks and movement patterns that you're going to have to learn. And yeah, there's a good variety in this. And as you can see, this is still a 2D game. This definitely has better animation and higher resolution pixel art than the Genesis version did, but it's still a 2D game, and they're still relying on a retro style to it, even if it's higher resolution than the Genesis could have done back in the day. And I like that. I actually really like how this looks. I think the backgrounds look good. I think the multi-layer scrolling is really nice. Those explosions are really cool. You know, the boss looks pretty good as well. My only other gripe, and we talked about another sound gripe, is you're probably already hearing it, is that, yeah, to me, the gun is way too loud and it's kind of obnoxious. It didn't need to be that strong. For those couple of elements, that, and especially that intro sound, I don't know what they were thinking. If that's what the 3DS version sounded like, why could they not have improved that for the Switch version? I don't know, but oof, yeah, not my favorite, but easily manageable, to be sure. And as you can see as well, you do have lives, but you have a health meter, and you can occasionally pick up vitality power-ups that will restore some of your health. Now, what I am going to tell you is that this remake, at least on the normal difficulty, is really easy. I love shmups. I'm generally not very good at them. I 1cc'd this game the first time I played it, which is the first time I've ever played any version of this. And I only died 3 or 4 times, and at least twice of those, 2 of those were because I wasn't paying attention and bumped into something. So yeah, just so you know, it is pretty easy, but there are multiple difficulty levels, and if you beat the game once, you unlock the very hard level, the hardest one. So you can ratchet things up if you want. And it's pretty good to get your feet wet as well to start on like this. As you can see, the game does have a scoring system. Now, you've heard me talk before about modern shmups that lack both online leaderboards and replays, right? You've heard me say that replays are more of a nice to have, to be sure, but online leaderboards in this day and age are kind of inexcusable. Well, this has a combination that I'm not sure if I've ever seen, which is that it does have leaderboards, local only though, not online, but it does have replays. Yeah, so you can, at the end of every level, you have the option to record a replay of it. There's a number of slots that you can save them in, and you can go back and watch your replays to analyze them and, you know, try to learn how to improve, etc., as you would expect. And the game does have leaderboards, but they are local only. Now, on the 3DS, which is where this came out, that was not all that surprising. The 3DS had online capability, but a lot of people didn't use it online, or if they did, it was very rare. So it would have been hard to make an online leaderboard system that worked. People did it, but I can understand that. But I will say that this does seem to be a bit of a quick and dirty port for the Switch. It's not a bad port. This runs very well on the Switch, and it doesn't take up a lot of space on the system. You know, it's not a bad port. But if you look back at the title screen, if you go back to that point in the video, you'll notice that this game actually still lists the 3DS publisher on it, who, as far as I can tell, have nothing to do with this version. So it really looks like that they just got some porting house to take the 3DS version, which I presume had like some of the status things that you're seeing around the side of the screen. if it was like most 3DS games, so you can save a replay there. If it was like most 3DS games, that stuff was probably displayed on the other screen, and they just consolidated it all onto one screen, and that's what they did. I'm going to take the bigger ship here. You can pick a different ship for each level if you want, and depending on the level, one or the other can be more to your advantage. So this does seem to be, on one hand, a quick and dirty port, but only in the sense that it doesn't have some modern features that I think gamers are pretty right to expect. But it's, in terms of the conversion from a 2-screen system to a 1-screen system, it's fine, and everything works very well. So yeah, just be aware of that it doesn't have those features if those are important to you. But the fact that it does have replays is nice, but if you want to compete with this on a score level, then you're going to have to do it in a bit more of a manual fashion, I guess you'd say. As far as I know, this is only out on the Switch right now. It's not on the other consoles nor the PC, though this game apparently did get a Windows release in 2018. I haven't really managed to find much about that, but I'm not sure if it was this version or something else. This game has had a bit of an odd history, because like, the original developer is long gone. The original publisher, which in North America was a sub-label of Acclaim, is also long gone. The company that did this port, that developed this port, I can't find much info on. I think they're also gone. The original publisher, which is actually Teon of RoboCop Rogue City fame, is still around, but not involved in this at all. So it's... Some of these older titles, even the more obscure ones, often have very interesting histories in terms of all the hands they pass through and all the cooks that are involved, that are in the kitchen with them. It's kind of an interesting thing. Gives me a whole new respect for some of these companies like Night Dive and Sneg that are trying to secure rights to old titles to re-release them, and the absolute nightmare fuel of what they have to deal with sometime to be able to get these things out. But yeah, I have been enjoying this. To 1cc it took me, what would I say, probably about 90 minutes or so, which is actually pretty long for a shmup, especially one that came out in the 16-bit era, even on home consoles, considering as well that it's not particularly difficult on the normal difficulty. That's actually not bad. And the levels vary quite a bit. You can see that the environments change a lot. The way again, the bosses are quite inventive, and there's quite a bit of difference. And the last level is super weird. I won't spoil it, I suppose, but the last level is quite unique and odd, and there's a lot of bosses in the last level, let me put it that way. But once again, and you see, this is a kind of cool thing. You take out this boss, and you gotta amp spray out of here at high speed, trying to avoid things and shooting your way through. It's cool. If this was in like a Capcom or a Konami shmup or something, this would be insanely hard. Like, you would have to practice this over and over again to be able to get through here without eating your credit up. But in this, it's pretty straightforward. It's really not that bad. So that's the thing to keep in mind. But I am still playing on the normal difficulty as well. So this is something where if you were playing it on a high difficulty, you'd have to really pay attention to the patterns, I'm sure, and really memorize your route out, right? So kind of interesting. So it does have that replayability if you want to play it on, multiple difficulty levels and things like that. So here's the main boss. Now, there is no co-op in this either, which will be a turn-off for some people. I do like co-op shmups, but they also do require a certain degree of coordination with the other player that not everybody's down for. So some people don't really care about that. But if co-op is important to you, you won't get that here either. But I do think that despite the fact that this seems to be, as I said, kind of a quick port of a 3DS title to the Switch, it seems to have been a very good title to begin with. The base game on the Genesis still holds up pretty well. I played a good amount of that when I was prepping for this video, and it holds up in its own right. But this remake has really good art, and the changes that they've made to it are, aside from a couple of those really grating sound effects, are overall quite a substantial improvement. And a quick and dirty port of something that was really good to begin with means it's still pretty good. As long as the port doesn't make it actively worse, which this definitely doesn't, it's still a pretty solid experience, and one I enjoyed, and I think I will go back and try to beat this on at the very least hard, if not very hard, because, you know, sometimes it's nice to have you know, I don't have the patience for some of the really brutally hard, like bullet hell shmups and things like that. I like those games. I think they're really cool, but I will never be good at them. Like, just no. And sometimes it's nice to have a shmup where, you know, you can chew through it with reasonable ease, but still feel that you saw some cool stuff, you fought some cool enemies, and you had a good experience overall. And, you know, if this can do that, but then also provide the extra challenge for those who really want it, then that's a win-win, I think. And yeah, the only real improvements that would be nice is online leaderboards, and that's never going to get patched in. That's too much additional work to patch that in, so we're never going to see that. But, you know, not the end of the world. But by God, either replace the gun and that intro film sound effect, or at the very least, like, mix them down a little bit. Like, just turn them down a little bit, because my God, guys, I don't know what you're thinking with that. But I have to say, like, that's something, when you fire this up and first hear that first sound effect, it is not a good first impression. It really isn't. But yeah, other than that, I've quite enjoyed this. I actually wouldn't mind going back and trying to finish the actual original Genesis version as well, because the Genesis actually did have a good number of shmups on it, and it was interesting to see one like this that was published by Acclaim, of all people. That is not a genre Acclaim was involved in very often, even before Acclaim really started to suck. And yeah, this was really well put together, and it was a quality game even back then, and it was a quality game that got, you know, got a remake that was clearly made by people who liked it and, you know, wanted to treat it with respect and give it a good go. And it's nice to see that come out on more platforms, because I don't know anybody who played this on the 3DS. I didn't even know this existed on the 3DS. So it was probably pretty niche back then. And, you know, it's nice to see this come out on a system where it's going to get exposed to more people. Would be nice to see this on the other consoles. Would be nice to, I mean, porting from the 3DS to the Switch can't be any, at least in my mind, can't be any harder than porting to the other systems, because the 3DS and the Switch share basically nothing in common hardware-wise. So it'd be nice to see this on the other consoles. I actually didn't check before I recorded if the PC version of this that came out is on Steam. If it is, I'll put info about that down below. But yeah, more places for stuff like this would be good, because those shmups are having a little bit of a renaissance these days, mostly thanks to indies. You know, it's a cause that needs more supporters. So you know, giving people more ways to be one of those is always a good thing. So, but yeah, that is Steel Empire, or at least the remake of Steel Empire. You know, the other thing, maybe little criticism I would say, is it would be nice if this maybe included the original game as well, either in an emulator or to have one of those cool options where you can push a button and switch between the old and new graphics. Something like that would be cool, but, you know, it's one of those things that everybody says they want and that they really like, but everyone does it once and then they're like, huh, that's cool, and then they never do it again. And engineering that, I'm sure, is not that easy. So I'm not really bothered that it's missing, but being able to have the old, you know, the old Genesis version on here that you could choose to run just under a layer of emulation might be nice. But, you know, this is a very faithful remake, so I'm not too bothered about that. But yeah, once again, that is Steel Empire. It is out now. Yeah, I've been enjoying it. It's a good shmup. It's not the hardest shmup in the world. It's not the most technically advanced or systemically deep shmup in the world, but it's a very good one. And it's a good remake of a good game that I'm glad to see get a new lease on life, which is always cool. So thank you guys very much for watching. I do appreciate it. If you like what you saw here, please do all the normal YouTube things. And you can also follow me over at twitch.tv/pxabstraction. As I record this, I have been on a little hiatus from streaming just because I've been really busy with a bunch of stuff. But we're going to be coming back and focusing on retro stuff, actually. We're going to be tackling what I call my deep backlog. And I'm actually really looking forward to it. And we have a fantastic little community there, and I'd love to see you be a part of it. So thank you again, everybody, and I'll see you in the next video. You folks have yourselves a good one. Take her easy.